People.
Three leading contenders in the August 15 Osun governorship election have just one thing in common. Accord candidates Governor Ademola Adeleke, APC's candidate Bola Oye Bamiji, and ADC's candidate Najim Salam all hail from Osun West District. With 14 candidates in the race, the contest is expected to be a tight battle of political structures, popularity, and voter support. Adeleke is seeking a second term after his 2022 victory, while Oye Bamiji and Salam are hoping to unseat the incumbent. With campaigns winding down, all eyes are now on this Saturday when Osun voters will decide who leads the state of the living spring. So beyond the campaigns, political calculations, the big question is who has the political structure, voter support, and credibility to emerge this Saturday? Joining us to unpack all this is election observer Nelson Ekujumi. Good afternoon, sir. Such a huge pleasure having you in our studios live this afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Thank you very much, sir. Osun State heads to the polls this August 15. And of course, beyond just one person emerging as the governorship candidates, we've had political observers say that this is one of the most critical, one of the most intense off-cycle gubernatorial election that we have ever seen in recent years. In your own point of view, what would you say or how would you assess the political atmosphere at Osun State right now?
Well, thank you very much. The political atmosphere in Osun State right now is one of calmness, even though there's a detention among the political gladiators. The parties are still going about with their campaigns. If you go around the towns, people are going about their legitimate businesses. Those who are going for political rallies are going about it. This election, the atmosphere pervading this election on Saturday is not in any way different from what happened in 2014, 2018, and 2022. The race for the government house in Osun State has always been intense and very tough among gladiators. And this is not in any way different. So let nobody come and say this is a new chapter, that we have never seen this before. We saw this in 2014 when we had Rauf Aregbesola on the ballot against, I think, Omishori. Then we also had it in 2018. Then in 2018, we had Oyetola versus Governor Adeleke, in which Oyetola won. In 2022, Governor Adeleke defeated the incumbent Governor Oyetola, and now we are in 2026. So it's a rehash of the intense political rivalry that has always, been the hallmark of governorship election in Osun State. Unfortunately, in those previous elections that I've mentioned, it has been the ACN versus the PDP. The PDP has been a recurring decimal. But in 2026, the PDP is missing on the ballot. That is the only remarkable difference.
Right. You made mention of how we've had previous elections in Osun State in 2014, 2018, and 2022. And we all know that election is not a one-time exercise, but a continuous process. And INEC right now has put out a statement saying how ready they are for this Saturday. But let's take a look back at the mock accreditation that happened. We had some glitches during the mock accreditation, and even in Osun State at the moment, they've been able to put out the Interagency Consultative Committee on Election Security, which is ICCES. You know, they've been able to identify high-risk areas and also put in security at every place in time, because if you walk into Osun State right now, you would see the heavy presence of military. So what impact would you say it's going to have on voters' participation in Osun? Because in 2022, we had the highest turnout of voters, and even for the accreditation. But with the recent killings, you know, the arresting of some Accord parties, EFCC intervention, what would you say is going to, you know, have an effect on the Osun election?
Well, I am not God. I cannot predict what will happen on Saturday. I'm a mere mortal. But knowing the political sophistication of the people of Osun State, I expect, I'm hopeful, I'm optimistic, because in the next 2 to 3 hours, I'll be in Osun State, I'll be in Osogbo or any of these, because I've been in Osun in the last 1 week. I only left Osun on Sunday, and I'll be back in Osun today, Tuesday. It's because of this, your interview, that I've decided to hold up somewhere so that we can have this conversation. But immediately I'm through with this conversation, in the next 2-3 hours, I'll be in Osun State. So the turnout for this election, despite the ugly, incidences that we have seen with regards to electoral violence, which is condemnable, because as a human being, I will not support any party or individual resorting to violence in propagating what he wants to do to better the life of the people. That is an absolute no-no area for me. So in looking at the election coming up in Saturday, the people themselves, even with all these ugly incidences that we have seen, which we hope that the people will be able to overcome and muster the courage to come out. We have been a part of a group that has interfered with the Nigerian police, the Nigerian Security and Defense Corps, the DSS, and even the media. That was last week. And we held a press conference at the NUJ Chapel in Osogbo. That was on Thursday, on Wednesday, if I'm correct. Yes, on Wednesday or Thursday. And the feelers we have out there is that security is going to be top-notch. Security is going to be, sorry. Security is going to be top-notch. I don't know if you are hearing me. Security
yes,
is
I
going
can hear
to be
you.
top-notch.
Please go on.
Yes, a lot of deployment has been made, and we are hopeful. Like I told you, I don't know tomorrow.
Yes.
But I'm praying and optimistic that the people of Osun State, like we have known them, will come out en masse on Saturday to cast their ballot for the candidates of their choice in an atmosphere devoid of fear, intimidation, and threat of violence.
So talking about casting of ballots, this is the first time that we're going to be doing PVC collection in the state. That Osun is the first state that is going to be introducing downloadable PVCs for voters who possibly applied for replacement due to damage. What is your thoughts on that? Because what could this new system mean? Could it give us more voter access or credibility, or even maybe a chance?
It should that I with responsibility. I is in sync with the fact that democracy can only be sustained when the people participate. And that is why INEC has put in place this measure so that voters, eligible voters, you can download your PVC. But don't be surprised, come election day, some people want to play funny games, because even if you download your PVC, if your name is not on the voters register in a particular polling unit, you cannot vote. So don't be taken away or be shocked if you see people come out and say, oh, I took my PVC to the polling unit, and they could not find my name on the ballot, on the voters register. We must be very careful as journalists, because the role of the media is to disseminate factual and objective information. A lot of mudslinging, character assassination, lies, falsehood, and misinformation will pervade the public space. But the media must always be at top of their game to, to separate the facts from the emotions. So by allowing downloading of PVC, it shows you clearly that INEC is in sync with the fact that every eligible voter that has registered must be allowed to exercise his franchise, with the PVC. So I think it is a big kudos to INEC, because I'm sure, like you have seen in the mock election that was conducted, it shows clearly that if you don't have a PVC, you cannot vote, which has always been the mantra. No PVC. If you don't have a PVC, please stay in your home and continue to watch African Magic and allow those who have PVC to come to the polling station on election day to cast their votes. That is our appeal to those who are not registered. And to the voters, please come out and vote for the candidates of your choice.
Come out in mass and vote for the candidates of your choice. So yes, kudos to INEC on that one. But I really want to take you back to the time of 1998 to 2000, where we had a lawyer in person of Barrister Ephraim Akpata. He's like one of the first son that ever chaired INEC. And right now, for the first time since the year 2000, we're having a son in person of Josh Amopiton chair the INEC. Do you see changes in how INEC usually carry out the election, or is this just politically symbolic? Because, critics will say that since it's a barrister chairing the INEC, we should see some changes with the way INEC would collate the results and, release the winners.
There's no magic that will be performed by the new INEC chairman that is not known to all the stakeholders. The process for conducting of election is very transparent. The collation of results is very transparent. We have seen the introduction of technology by INEC under the leadership of the former INEC boss, Professor Attairu Jega, and we have seen an upscale in the technological improvements with the tenure of the former INEC boss, Professor Mahmoud Yakub. And today we have a Professor Joseph Amopiton, who is also going to write. He has an opportunity to write his name in gold, because whether you want to admit or whatever the naysayers may say, with the introduction of PVC and e-card reader by Professor Attairu Jega, which was of scale to the Beavers and the IREV under Professor Mahmoud Yakub, our election can rank as one of the best in the world. A lot of persons who throw mud at our elections are persons who have vested interests, who are not interested in stating the fact as it is. Today, our election is conducted in such a way that if you are a voter, if you register to vote in polling 01, if you go to polling 02 or 03, you cannot vote. And our election is such that if you are not accredited by the Beavers machine, which also has its own limitation, because nothing is perfect, and we don't even have a perfect system anywhere in the world. If the Beavers machine does not recognize you, then you are not allowed to vote. And the Beavers machine has been configured in such a way that if it does not recognize your face, it will recognize your thumb. So, with the introduction of technologies by INEC so far, we have made remarkable progress, because I have covered elections since 1999 and I can beat my chest. You remember in the past, in 1999 to 2007, under the administration of former President Olusegun Obasanjo, when Professor Maurice Wu was the INEC chairman, that was the period when people like Nelson Mandela, Mother Teresa, Archbishop Tutu, Mike Tyson, George Bush voted in our election. That was the era where the electoral malpractice that was perpetrated on this country was unimaginable, and it has been documented in history. And since 2007, when we had the election in 2011, it was an improvement on what we had in the 1999, 2003, and 2007 2007-11 was a shenanigan. That even the winner of the election in 2007, late former President Umaru Yar'Adua, publicly came out and said the election that brought me into office is too fraudulent. My conscience will not allow me to hold that mandate and be comfortable. And the man set up a Justice Wise panel on electoral reforms. So we have passed that stage. Professor Amupitan is building on what is in the Electoral Act. Don't forget that whatever INEC does must be in consonance with the Constitution and the Electoral Act. INEC cannot just wake up and conduct election at its own whims and caprices. It's not done that way. We're a country governed by laws. Our democracy is governed by laws. So today, INEC, I can tell you with all sense of responsibility that INEC has always conducted its affairs, has always conducted the elections in tandem with global best practices. Anybody who has an alternative position must come out with facts to substantiate the opposite. But as we speak, INEC is on top of its game. We can only encourage them to continue to do better.
All right. So you're stating that INEC is on top of its game. Are you aware that for the BVAS, we're currently using version 10 when we have version 17 out there? I also want to attest to the fact that you made mention of these political figures in person of George Bush, Mother Teresa, and some other political figures that you mentioned. What would you attest to that? You know, because we've not had free and fair. Some would actually argue that we've not had free and fair election in Nigeria. So you're saying that we've had one of the best. What would you attest to that?
Well, when I told you that Mother Teresa, George Bush, that was the era of massive thumb printing and ballot stuffing and ballot snatching. Ballot stuffing and ballot snatching, massive thumb printing, was prevalent under the tenure of former President Olusegun Obasanjo. If you remember that the PDP won about 5 states in the southwest: Ogun, Oyo, Ondo, Ekiti, and Osun. But the then AC or ACN went to court and were able to prove that the results returned was not commensurate scientifically with the time allotted for voting. That the court was able to, through science, through scientific, investigation and verification, was able to prove that no voter can vote under a second. That it will take about 2, 3, or 4 minutes for a voter to be able to check his name, collect the ballot paper, his finger is marked, he takes the ballot paper, he goes into the cubicle, casts his vote and throws into the ballot. That was why in 2014, the PDP lost Edo. If you remember, Professor Osumba was declared the winner by INEC. Oshomole went to court, and the victory of Professor Osumba was obtained by the court, that it was a fraud. In Ondo State, Olusegun Mimiko, through the courts, became governor against the fraud perpetrated by the then INEC that returned Olusegun Agagu as the governor. In Osun State, the fraud that brought in Olagbusoye Oyinlola was obtained by the courts, and it brought in Rauf Aregbesola. So, in Ekiti, the fraud that brought in Ayo Fayoshi, or I can't remember who was there then, was obtained by the court, and Kayode Fayemi became the governor. So, what I've just told you is to show you the type of fraud that was perpetrated under the then INEC by Professor Maurice Owu and former President Olusegun Obasanjo. That was why when the matter went to court, and the court was examining the ballot papers and the voters register, they discovered those names as persons who voted. And you and I know that under the Nigerian Constitution, the only person that can vote in an election in Nigeria is a citizen of Nigeria. Even somebody who has been convicted by a court of law does not have the right to vote, even if you are a Nigerian. But that is to tell you the electoral manipulation and the shenanigans perpetrated by former President Olusegun Obasanjo, of which history has recorded in. And there's no way anybody can whitewash that away from these 2 books. If you know what happened in 2003, under former President Olusegun Obasanjo. So what we are saying here is that you said there's the 2017 version of Vivas.
Yes.
Well, as of today, what INEC is deploying has not been faulted as being inadequate. And even if we want to go to 2017 version, you and I should know very well that election, just like every human endeavor, costs money. Are we ready to appropriate the funds to acquire the 2017 version? And what are the parameters, what are the contents of the 2017 version that makes it better than the 2010 version, which you have stated that we have now? So I don't know about that, but I'm very, very conversant with the fact that as an election observer who has been keenly active in the process, what we presently have on ground is one of the best.
All right. We'll see how this Saturday's election come, and I hope we're definitely going to have you, next week after the election to ascertain how the INEC did during the election. But now, let's come back home. You made mention of how one striking feature of this election is the absence of both the PDP and the Labour Party. Of course, we have that because Ademola Adeleke, for the last election, he ran under the People's Democratic Party, but right now, he's running under Accord. So how is the absence of these three major parties reshaping the electoral contest? Or does their absence simplify the race, or does it actually make the outcome harder to predict? I also want to add to the fact that, PDP, in person of the faction of Olagunseye Oyinlola, the person actually came out to say that they are supporting or they are endorsing APC's candidates. What's your stand on that?
Well, first and foremost, let me start from where you started from. The successful and the credible conduct of an election is not the responsibility of INEC alone. Every stakeholder must play their games according to the rules. The voter must go to the polling station, vote peacefully, and leave without being induced, without selling his votes. That is also important. So, talking about Labour Party and PDP, Labour Party has never been in the picture in elections in Osun State. It has always been the PDP versus the AC, PDP versus the ACN, PDP versus the APC. So those are the two major political parties. Talking about Governor Ademola Adeleke crossing from the PDP to the Accord Party, it was a result of his realization that if he didn't cross, as at the time he crossed, he would not have had a platform under which to run. Save for the courts, the PDP would have been dead by now. We know the undertakers of the PDP. We know how the PDP found itself in this state that it is today. And it all started in 2015 with former President Goodluck Jonathan, who reneged on the gentleman's agreement within his party. And since then, the party has been on the downward slide. Then the final nail of the coffin of the party, was nailed by former Vice President Atiku Abubakar, who wanted to succeed late former President Muhammadu Buhari, also a Fulani man, from the northern part of Nigeria. And you and I know very well the political temperature of Nigeria, that if the North runs 2 terms of 8 years, the South must also run its own 2 terms of 8 years. So we'll know about that. So the PDP the Labour Party has never been in the picture in Osun State. Then talking about the crossing of Ademola Adeleke to the Accord Party, he crossed because he knew he needed a platform to contest the election. And what it shows you clearly, which is crossing to the Accord Party and how some persons have also jumped ship with him, is a testament, is an affirmation of what we have always said, that our political parties don't have ideology. Ask me in what way is the ideology of PDP in alignment with the ideology of Accord Party today. Nobody will be able to tell you. So also the people who are jumping ship from one party to, they don't have any ideology. All they're after is where their bread will be buttered. And that is very, very unfortunate. I expect if I'm joining a political party, I will say, this political party, does it represent what I believe in as a human being? Do I believe that government, if we get into power, we should take care of people's interests, or we should submit every economic indices to market forces? So many indices are one should consider. But because, like I always tell people, the people's ideology who make up a party is what becomes the ideology of the party. If the people are ideologically less, if they don't have ideology, you don't expect people who don't have ideology to be in a party that does not have, that has ideology. It will not work. So talking about the election, like I stated earlier on, I'm very hopeful. What we are doing this afternoon is also mobilizing the voters that come out and vote. The security have assured us, and we are confident that they will do the job. I've been in Osun State in the last almost 144 hours before I left the place, and I'm returning there in the next few hours. And I can tell you for free, I'm very optimistic that come election day, if you do anyhow, you will see anyhow.
All right, sir. So before I let you go this hour, what do you think is the single biggest factor that will determine who wins Osun State this Saturday?
There's no single factor, but one fact you must not run away from is that every politics is local. The people of Osun State know the local underlying tendencies that determine where they cast their ballot. And don't be surprised that the politicians will feast massively on those sentiments, to sway the voters. But you can be rest assured, I've been speaking with people in Osun State because I'm also going to Osun State. I've been there, and people are telling me that we are coming out to vote. It was just like in 2018. No, it was in 2014. I remember really well when the then federal government under former President Goodluck Jonathan, deployed all the weapons of violence to Osun State to intimidate the people. And days before the election, we asked the people, where are you going to cast your ballot? And some of them told us that even if they put lion at the polling center, that they are coming there to cast their ballot. If I tell you the story of the 2014 election, you now it's an affirmation that nothing can withstand the will of the people. And that was what happened then that led to the victory of former Governor Rauf Aregbesola, where the then government at the federal level, having won election in Ekiti State, thought they could repeat the same feat in Osun. If you remember the Ekiti Gates, I was in Ekiti. After the Ekiti, we came to Osun, and the people resisted, the federal absurdity, federal illegality, to make them stay away from the ballot station. So I expect that the people of Osun State, looking at their trajectory, they are not cowards. Oh, yeah. The people of Osun State are brave men and women, and I expect that come Saturday, we on our part, we the media, as well as other stakeholders, we are going to mobilize and galvanize the people. Come out on election day. Your security is rest assured. Don't join anybody to foment trouble. Vote and go peacefully to your home. But if there's anybody likely to foment trouble and please quickly pass the information to the security agencies and they will do their job.
Right. So there you have it, Osun State people. You've heard it from the mouth of our guest today in person, of Nelson Ekujumi, our election observer. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us on this wonderful afternoon. We're hoping that we are going to have you sometime next week to discuss how the election process went in Osun State.
Thank you very much. I'll be available. Thank you.
Yes, sir. So thank you so much for joining us, great people of Osun State and vastly everyone in Nigeria at the moment. All eyes are on this Saturday, and trust us, a Live News Network will be there to cover the election. Good afternoon. Oof.